Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Learning About SCORE's Advisory Board. My name is O.C. Harrison, and I've been at SCORE for a little over 3 years. My background is in financial services industry. I worked at Ernst & Young and Bank of America for combined together about 15 years in the financial services, and I specialized in operational risk efficiencies. I then moved over to the nonprofit world in mindfulness education. Matt?
Hi, everyone. Matt Krieger here, fellow SCORE mentor with the Fairfield County, Connecticut chapter. Welcome to our Learning About the SCORE Advisory Board Practice webinar today. My background is enterprise IT in the information technology area. I also have experience in publishing, nonprofit, and manufacturing.
So a couple of housekeeping items. We'd like this to be an interactive session, so we really encourage you to ask as many questions as you like. There is a chat box at the bottom of the screen, so feel free to put in your questions there, and we will get to them at the end of the session. If we don't get to everyone's questions, we'll certainly follow up with you. As a note, this session is also being recorded. So for those of you that don't know, SCORE is a volunteer organization. We're about 10,000 strong across the country, and we are supported by the Small Business Administration. We provide confidential advice from business experts. So how many of our attendees today have worked with SCORE? Again, you can raise your hand in the chat box. So I'll give that a minute while, oh, I see lots of raised hands. That's great. So SCORE also provides educational classes, workshops, and webinars where you can really learn anything from Finance 101, how to use social media, to designing websites, for example. We also have business roundtables, which is a forum for small businesses to get together to discuss personal business issues with other like-minded individuals. And finally today, we're going to be focused on the advisory board, which we're really excited to share with everyone. The advisory board service has been around for several years with great success. And to date, we've worked with more than half a dozen companies.
The advisory board service was built around a need that we find many small business entrepreneurs have. I'm a small business entrepreneur as well. I run a manufacturing company, and I have these needs as well. We've discovered, as we've talked and met with many entrepreneurs, many CEOs of small and growing startup companies, that there is a lot of loneliness in the CEO suite of a small company. There is a lack of networking and a lack of a peer group. And one of the things that the SCORE Advisory Board Service aims to do is to fill that gap and to bridge the feeling of loneliness that many startup CEOs have. We also find that from talking to our clients and prospective clients, that many CEOs and small businesses face a lot of common issues. That is strategic problems, for example, entering new markets, identifying which markets to go to, growth that is stalled, and difficulty in scaling up in a stable way. Everybody experiences cash flow issues and issues eking out margin. We find people trying to staff for growth, putting together the right talent to really help their company get to the next level and to grow. Financing is a common theme, whether it is financing from standard debt or equity financing to venture capital or other forms. Financing is a big common challenge. Lack of strategic use of technology, we find, is an issue that holds companies back and that advisory boards can help bridge the need for. And of course, things like succession planning, long-term strategic plans, and deciding whether or not to keep your business or to wind it down. These are a set of problems that we find are in common between many, many small businesses. SCORE New York City advisory boards are made up of SCORE certified mentors. These are individuals who have been through the SCORE national certification process. They also undergo an annual code of conduct process. They sign that code of conduct. I sign that code of conduct every year. And in there, one of the things that's very important that we do is we swear to preserve the confidentiality of our clients' information. The advisors on the SCORE New York City advisory boards come from many different backgrounds, businesses large and small, management positions in large companies, CEOs of startup companies, some are working, some are retired, all kinds of industries from food to technology to financial services. They have experience in many disciplines, including operations and HR and technology. Really a lot of diversity in the advisory board members who comprise these boards. Our objective, and I think that you'll agree as well, a very important objective is that we create a team of the right disciplines for you. That is the right backgrounds, the right skills, the right domain expertise, specifically tailored to help you address your business challenges. The advisory board service is a relationship in every way. And the most successful advisory board engagements we have are those where it's looked at as a relationship by everybody who participates. As part of any relationship, we make a number of commitments to you in order to keep the relationship healthy. We agree to work with clients for at least 1 year and to meet together on at least a quarterly basis. As we said before, we provide expertise that is relevant and specific to you, whether it is domain expertise in terms of, for example, operations or finance or HR, or whether it is specific industry experience, we tailor that team to you. After an initial interview, an onboarding process, if we determine that it is a right fit, we typically only take a few weeks to source the right people and put that team together for you. And of course, it is very important that I reiterate that we maintain your confidentiality, and we certify every year that we do that in our ongoing code of conduct process. There are things that we on the advisory board expect of you, the CEO, and of your team in order to make the relationship the best. So we expect that you will be receptive and open to our feedback. And I think by virtue of you being here today, you've already demonstrated that. We expect to be able to work not only with you, but with your key managers, your management team as well. We think that getting the best, broadest picture of you and your company through your people is very important to a healthy relationship. We look for the CEO to drive the agenda, to set and state the overall objectives, to get agreement on deliverables and specific tactical and long-term strategic plans. We look for the CEO to really drive that bus. We also look for the CEO to commit to relevant deliverables that are discussed at the meetings and provide those deliverables to the advisory board in advance of the meetings in a reasonable amount of time. And finally, the best relationships we find, the ones that work the most nicely, are where there is transparency with the advisory board around key business information such as financials, competition, operational concerns, etc. That transparency is really necessary for us to deliver the best possible service.
Okay, so today we're going to share with you 3 videos. The videos are a couple of minutes long, and they're really lots of information and experiences from different advisory board clients at different stages of their business. The videos also show 3 completely different businesses, and they've all had unique experiences with the advisory board. I'd like to introduce Norm Sherman in the videos. He is facilitating the interviews, and you'll see him in a few minutes. Our first video is with Geneva Worldwide with CEO Craig Buckstein. Geneva provides language interpretation services and has been around for over 115 years and is family owned. So here's another question to everyone. We know how challenging it can be to work in a family owned business. How many of you are in a family owned business? Again, you can go to your chat and raise your hand. Let's see if anyone, I see 2 so far. 3. Okay, a couple of more coming in. All right, great. So again, we know how interesting that can be working with family members. But let's get started with Geneva Worldwide's video, and we'll talk about the key takeaways afterwards.
I'd like to start off by asking you a couple of questions. First, tell us a little bit about Geneva Worldwide, if you would.
Sure. We're a third-generation family-owned business founded in 1903. So we're 117 years young, and we're a language service company. We focus on interpretation, which is face-to-face, over the phone or through video remote interpreting, translation, transcription, anything language service related is our core business. We're the largest provider of linguists in New York State and for New York State, but we work nationwide and we work worldwide.
And who do you tend to do business with?
We do work across every different vertical. We work a lot with legal and medical and social service.
And how many employees do you have now?
32 full-time employees working in-house for us.
Tell me, how did you first learn about SCORE?
So we were doing one-on-one sessions, my father and I, with a few of the SCORE mentors, and we met Diane Dre, and she was the first entry that we had with SCORE.
And an advisory board, how did this come about? What made you interested, and how was it first raised to you as a possibility?
Well, Diane had mentioned that she'd had advisory board services, and it didn't register for me for probably a few years later that I came back to it. We were at a very interesting point in our company's history that we needed some advice, and I wanted to put together a group of people, and advisory board seemed like the perfect place to put them together based on the challenges we were having at the time. You
had an advisory board for about how long?
About 2 years.
And tell me what your experience was. What was your overall experience of working with the advisory board?
I thought it was great to have a diversity of thought and people that weren't within our 4 walls typically look after some of our challenges, be someone that we could bounce back and forth with, and just kind of coach us through certain things as well as lead us in areas that we might not otherwise have had that advice. So I thought it was great to have people from different subsects, different industries, get different opinions, have a lot of different business experience, and use them as a resource. And they were very helpful for a lot of our challenges.
That's great. How often did you interact with the board, and how did you tend to interact? Was it meetings, phone? How did it go?
We had 4 quarterly meetings face-to-face that the advisory board would come in for. We'd had homework that was due in between the advisory board sessions where we would do lots of write-ups, plenty of math exercises, pivot tables, charts, just so we can give them a board package. We would have intermittent phone calls. We had a leader of our board, and he was kind of our main point person. He would run through things that didn't have to go through the board necessarily. He would kind of work as the executive coach or just a peer mentoring coach before we brought things to the board. So for certain particular issues, he would actually come in face-to-face and meet with us, meet with myself and my father, go through some of our transition issues, and then otherwise he'd be available by phone in between the times that we were having our SCORE advisory board meetings.
So you said your experience was a positive one. I'd love you to dig back into your brain and give me an example of something that happened with your business as a result of the relationship with SCORE.
Sure. We're a family business. So part of my challenge was transition planning with my father. And we just didn't have any comfort that, the reins would be able to be passed to me, as well as what continuity looks like and even a future for him. And I think the SCORE group was amazing at trying to show what he was doing with the company, how he can repurpose what he did with us, why he didn't need that level of involvement. He was always both a type A and a very hyper-involved person, and why the changes in technology and my leadership and how I needed to be held accountable could only really happen if he stepped back. And I think it took people outside of our 4 walls. It took people with a lot of business experience, and really they were colleagues to him. That really resonated with him and actually allowed him to transition. He retired. It was also a leap of faith, too, because you didn't know which side it would come out on. I think we all went in with good intentions, and we have a good relationship. And, I had a good relationship with the advisory board, too. I think that all helped. But, yeah, at the end of the day, they could have just said, show your son the door. And that's always an option, really. In all things, love and war and family and business, what's best for the business might not be that one or both parties are still working in the business,
Great.
as we see. So they were really helpful to get us through that.
So if you were talking to the CEO of a firm that was considering a SCORE advisory board, what would you say to that person?
I'd say definitely start the process, interview some people. I think it's a great thing to have. It's great to have people to actually bounce ideas off of. They are an advisory board at the end of the day. They're not the ones who are going to make the decision. So it's important to understand what your role is. Your role is to come to the table prepared, open, honest. You kind of give what you get. There's no reason not to sit down and start putting together a team and get them in the same room together. And that you have the power and the flexibility to change out people if things aren't working, or if you just want to try new things. You're all of a sudden moving from a sales to a marketing capacity. You're looking to downsize. You're looking to sell. You need different people in the room depending on where your strategy is. You don't have to get stagnated. There's plenty of people at SCORE, and there's good people there to help steer you through it.
I'd like to start.
All right, so let's talk about the key takeaways with Geneva Worldwide. As I mentioned, it's a family-owned business, and they had an advisory board for about 2 years or so. What was interesting is the AB team leader, the SCORE mentor, was not only leading the team, but really became an executive coach to Geneva Worldwide. And in this case, the management team was a father and son duo. The SCORE mentor, the team leader, was coaching the management team. He helped put together the data for the advisory board quarterly meetings, and he really became integral to, working with Geneva Worldwide and then preparing them for the quarterly meetings. The other interesting part of this board is the idea that it was a family-owned business, so they really had to go through an exit planning or a succession planning process, and they had to build the strategy. And what's key to this case is Craig, as you can see from the interview, was open to what the potential outcome could be and whether he was part of the solution or not. In this case, it proved to be successful for him, and his father was able to step down peacefully. But, what's important is that Craig and his father were both open to the various ideas that the advisory board team had. Okay, next we're going to move on to Sattva Vida and Karen Lauterstein. This is a completely different industry. We're going to be speaking about the food industry. So Karen was in her previous life, she was in the tech industry for over 20 years in sales, and she decided to get out of the rat race. She then decided to launch Sattva Vida, which means pure life, and that happened in 2015. She makes these energy bites out of coconuts and dates and some other ingredients, and they're delicious. I have to say, I can attest to that because I have tasted quite a few. So let's listen to Karen right now.
My name is Karen Lauterstein. I'm the founder and CEO of healthy snack food company Sattva Vida, which translates to pure life. And we make healthy little energy balls or energy bites. They're primarily made with dates and nuts. I have them right here, a little visual.
Yum.
They're delicious. I'm sorry you can't try them. I founded the company back in 2015. I had been in corporate America for 20 years in tech sales. So I just wanted to kind of get off the rat race and follow my own passion.
Was that a hard transition?
It was a transition. It was a fun transition. I don't have a background in food. I'm not a chef. I've never had my own business. So it was a total just, how do I make this happen? And I was like, I can. Yeah, and there are resources out there, such as SCORE, to help you. Yeah. So I started taking it really seriously, and I launched the business, and now we're in about 350 stores. Is
there anything in particular that stands out that you got from the advisory board that really helped you with your business?
Well, there's a couple of things. I am a solo business owner. There's so many, every day, 20 million things are going in all these different directions. So first of all, to take time out of the day-to-day tactical areas of the business and focus strategically. Even preparing for the meeting, there were 2 other members that know nothing about me and my business. It's like, how do I present that snapshot and talk about my 3 and 5 year goals? So even taking the time to prepare for it strategically. And then once I was there and was able to lay this out to people that don't know much about myself or my business, to hear their insight and the direction that they think it should go in and what my top priority should be was awesome. And they don't always agree. The other interesting thing is not that they they don't always agree. So it was interesting to hear two different perspectives. I'm a food manufacturer. So one of my advisors was saying, it's big box retail. You got to get distributors, you got to get brokers, you got to go that way. And the other advisor said, no, it's e-com, it's DTC, direct to consumer, and you really need to build up the web base. So it was great to hear both of their perspectives and why, and then for me to be able to form my own opinion. And they're both right. But as a one person, there's only so much bandwidth and things I can do. So it was just, it was interesting to hear their, how they defended their cases.
Yeah, that's great.
And I respected that. It was really cool.
So for all of these people who are viewing this webinar right now, and they're thinking about getting a SCORE advisory board, what would you advise them?
Do it. I would say absolutely. There's no reason not to. This is a half a day of your time and preparing for it, where you get to sit in front of people that are experienced and, again, can look at your business from a high level and are coming from different backgrounds and expertise and can see things. And yeah, I would say absolutely. It's a terrific experience. I would say 100%, and get an individual SCORE mentor or a couple of them, because, the other thing about the SCORE advisory board is these are people that are experienced and they know people. So it's a networking aspect as well. I've made some great connections from names that they've given me that have helped propel my business forward. So it's not only the advice and the insight, it's the networking. It's one name. You can get connected to one person. That's why I met my co-packer today. My name is Karen Lauderstein.
All right, so let's look at the key takeaways for Karen. Karen started with one-on-one mentoring at SCORE. She had this real passion for food, but she needed help to build her business, and she didn't really have the relevant experience within the food industry. So, she might have needed help with branding, legal advice, how to set up the business. But then over time, once she really started to get a little bit more settled in her business, her SCORE mentor thought that she needed more diversified expertise. For example, with how to grow the business, how to do fulfillment, how do you fulfill that product and distribute it widely? What were the packaging limitations and how can we improve on packaging? How do you fit the product in the shelf versus the refrigerator? These were sort of all sorts of questions, that were talked about at the advisory board meetings. And what's also really interesting that she pointed out is there were different points of views in the sessions. And, I can ask the attendees now, doesn't that happen with you, whether you're in a family-owned business or in a small business with, your management? I'm sure there's lots of different opinions that come around, but at the end of the day, Karen had to take the different opinions, whether it was direct to consumer in terms of expanding broadly, or if it was going to the big box retailers. So she gathered all this info and had to make her own choice. All right, why don't we go on to our next client? Next but not least is GoGo Curry. Tomoko Omori is the CEO and president of GoGo Curry since 2012. GoGo Curry is a Japanese comfort food chain in the fast food casual segment, and there's about 70 local grab-and-go locations in Japan and about 9 locations in the US today. So let's listen to her video, and she is currently an advisory board member, and it's certainly been an interesting journey with her. She is an inspiration.
Today I'm here with Tomoko Omori, President and CEO of GoGo Curry. Would you tell us about GoGo Curry?
We serve Japanese comfort food, and we originated from Japan. And easier way to understand our company is we are master franchisee of a Japanese brand called GoGo Curry. And Japan has 70 locations, and then we have 8 locations in New York City and 1 in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And we became a franchisor in the United States.
Did you have any expectations about what an advisory board would do, or was it all new to you?
It was all new to me. And even 2018, I was wearing all the hats by myself. In order to scale our business, I needed, more vision more wider vision and advice, suggestion from the experienced people, but I couldn't afford it.
How frequently do you interact with the advisory board? Is it meetings? Is it phone? Is it video? How do you do it?
So we started out with the quarterly meeting in the very beginning, in person, however, because my speed is so fast, and then just updating that the quarter would take so much time, and also, that oh my God, you are there already kind of thing. They suggested to meet every month.
Talk a bit, if you would, about what areas the advisory board has been most helpful to you. It sounds like, you got into this role and didn't have the senior people who could help you. It sounds like this advisory board became your management team in many ways to really help you figure out how to grow the business. I'm interested in knowing what your experience was and how they helped.
Sure. I have an advisory board of the strategy, HR, the financing, franchise, and IT right now. As I said, I was wearing all the hats. So that first we need a people, so the HR really helped Deb introduce her resources and hire people, and helped me to how I should manage those people who we hired to hiring more people, and then evaluation system and that, and empowering the current people came from the ODB strategist. We had a mess in that QuickBook and accounting system, and that the finance person did a great job, but he fired me, and then I fired the franchise person at the time. The reason is that I don't know how honest I can be here, but it was not a good match. But Ozzy and Deb believe in me, and then says, let's regroup. So that has been fantastic advisory board after the member change.
Right now, you're talking to, I don't know how many people out there who have small businesses who are thinking about having a SCORE advisory board. What would you tell them?
Oh, go for it. They're grateful to work with this experienced, great people, who can make me open up my eyes and then focus on what I need to do in order to achieve where I want to go.
Today.
All right. So as you can see, Tomoko has lots of energy, and she's really an inspiration to entrepreneurs. She didn't know much English when she came here, and she taught herself and really has the attitude that if it can be done, she can do it. Some of the key takeaways is she really wanted to focus on franchising the Go-Go Curry brand when she came to the United States, and was looking for a SCORE mentor to help her. What she really needed was a team, because there's so many different facets to franchising that one person, one SCORE mentor really wouldn't have been enough. So what was decided was we created a board for her of, HR, who are the right people that could help facilitate this growth from a few restaurants to 55, which was her goal. A financing expert, how do you set up the books and records between the corporate side and the franchisee side? We needed a franchise operations expert to really build the Go-Go Curry franchise in a box and be able to sell that to franchisors. And then the overall strategy, how do you go about pursuing this entire effort? Another takeaway that she mentioned was the quarterly meetings really weren't sufficient for her because things were moving so rapidly. And so this particular board decided that perhaps we should go on a monthly basis. And Tomoko was very happy with that decision, and it was the right decision for this particular board. One final note, which was also very interesting, is that the makeup of the board it didn't turn out to be the correct fit. in terms of one individual. And so what we did was regroup and took in Tomoko's opinion, took in the advisory board's opinion, and then we decided to sort of retool the advisory board, and it changed the dynamics and became a very successful board that Tomoko is very happy with. All right, next slide. Okay, so in order to qualify for a SCORE advisory board, and I hope you, everyone did enjoy those videos as much as we enjoyed putting them together. But in terms of qualifying for an advisory board, we work with established businesses with revenues of at least $2 million, and there is a management team in place. There's also payment of an annual service fee of $3,000. Next slide. For those of you that have any questions, this is my email address at SCORE. So it's osy.harrison@scorevolunteer.org. That's osy.harrison@scorevolunteer.org. I also noticed that there's been a number of questions in the chat box. So my colleague Norm Sherman is our moderator today. So I'd like to introduce Norm.
Hi, everyone. Norm Sherman here. I've been capturing your questions during the course of this webinar, plus a number of questions came into us before the webinar. So here we go. So first question, does the advisory board consist of peer CEOs or only SBA volunteers?
So I can take that. The advisory board is very specific to one company. So it consists of usually 3, maybe 4 SCORE mentors. It can be, that will be on the advisory board. And again, it's very specific to you. We do have what we call the business roundtables, and that's where CEOs of different companies come together. And it's more at a higher level where you speak about your business, what's happening in your business. But the advisory board is at least a 1-year commitment, and we focus on what the CEO of the company wants to focus in on. So it's very unique.
Okay, thank you. Next question, what is the size of the board? How many board members are there?
I can take that. So we typically find that 3 is a good number, although depending on circumstances, it could be between 2 and 4. We tend not to like to go more than 4 because it just keeps things more organized to have a smaller group. But we find 3 generally is a good number. But as OC has said before, our focus is not so much on the number, but it's really putting together the right answer for you.
Okay, next one is an interesting question. Does the CEO interview and approve prospective advisory board members?
I'll take that. So the answer is no. The value in the service that we're providing is to provide the package of advisory board members to provide the service to your company. That being said, clearly the relationship has to work. And if there are concerns from the CEO about the choices, clearly we will have a discussion. We do ask for patience, but we do also ask the CEO to recognize that we're trying to put together a team that we feel directly addresses the strategic concerns that the CEO has brought to us. And it's important to recognize again that we're providing a package of services. I'm sorry, a service which is comprised of the advisory board members in totality as opposed to separate advisory board members.
I would also add that the entire idea of an advisory board is to get the CEO out of their comfort level and introduce the CEO to board members, or excuse me, advisory board members that, you know, have different opinions. And again, it's not a board of directors where the CEO reports to them. We really are an advisory board providing, advice to you. And so you can take that advice or not, but we want you to be exposed to different opinions.
Okay, good. Thank you. Next question. How do SCORE mentors keep up their knowledge base?
I can take that. I think that SCORE mentors keep up their knowledge base like any engaged, curious business person would. Typically, many of the SCORE mentors attend other SCORE sessions. They seek input from their peers. They learn from the advisory board clients that they have. They learn from their own clients if they do one-on-one mentoring. One of the things that is expected of all SCORE mentors, regardless of advisory board advisors, is that they be up to date on many aspects of business. Certainly in their particular areas, they're expected to be experts and kept up to date. But SCORE, both at the national and chapter level, provides additional programs to broaden the knowledge base of the individual mentors, but ultimately it comes down to their own interest and curiosity, which from my experience, thankfully, is very, very high.
Yeah, well, I certainly agree with that one, Matt. Next question. You had said that a company needs to commit to an advisory board for a year. Can an advisory board last longer than 1 year?
Yeah, I can take that. Yes, they can certainly last longer than a year. I think on average, they tend to last a year or two. And people usually have the advisory board when they're on some sort of cusp of change. They're looking to grow, looking to exit the business, looking to sell. And so that takes time. And so, the advisory board members really dig deep into your business and try to understand it and give the best advice that they can. And so it's a real commitment on a SCORE mentor's part to be part of an advisory board. And so we commit to you, as Matt mentioned at the beginning, to give you the best advice that we can and for the time period that you really need it for. And so it tends to be flexible in terms of the length, but it's definitely a minimum of a year.
Okay. Next question just came in. Can you request which specialists you want on your board, i.e. in which fields you need help?
I can take that. So the answer is that during the initial interview process and onboarding to make sure that the fit is right for both parties, for all parties, for an advisory board, we want to hear your business objectives. We want to hear where your pain points are. We want to hear what your strategic plans are. And in that, we want to put together what we think is the right answer to help your business. Now, certainly, you should be vocal about what you think you need, but we also ask that you be open-minded. For example, we've had situations in the past where a client might say that they request somebody with XYZ industry experience, but through discussions, what we really discover is they need someone with solid operations background, independent of industry. And then that fit ended up working very well. So absolutely, you should state that, but we also ask that you be open-minded about that composition.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Next question that just came in says, if I need to work on a business plan, can I get someone to assist me?
I can take that one. I might need a little bit more clarity on the question, but if if it's a new business and you're working on a business plan, I would certainly recommend working one-on-one with a SCORE mentor. Again, an advisory board works with established organizations that have been around for at least a year or two and have a couple of million in revenues, at least 2 million in revenues.
Okay. And so you mentioned one-on-one mentoring. What are the advantages of an advisory board versus one-on-one mentoring?
Well, again, if you're looking at someone like Gogo Curry, who Tomoko was looking to franchise, it would have been very challenging for her to go from one person to one person to one person versus having a team on board in a room hashing out the different things that she needed to do to franchise her restaurant. And so the advantage there is that you have a dedicated team to you that you not only meet on a quarterly basis, but the team leader also interacts with you during the quarterly sessions. And, if the CEO has a question, a finance question, they're certainly not prohibited from, reaching out to the finance expert on the advisory board. So it's just a more intimate conversation between the SCORE mentors, the advisory board, and the company.
And to add to that, there's also one of the advantages is that in the advisory board scenario, there's a greater synergy because you have all of the advisors, the subject matter experts together at the same time, adding cumulative value. Certainly during a one-on-one mentoring, it's the primary mentor's responsibility to bring in subject matter experts as necessary, but the advisory board really puts all those people in the room at the same time.
That's great. Thank you, guys. We've gotten a number of questions about whether or not an advisory board is capable of working virtually, particularly recognizing the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in the past 4 or 5 months, that's all we've been doing. We've gone virtual like everyone else. So the answer is absolutely yes. And certainly as things loosen up, we look forward to seeing our clients in person at the appropriate times, but we're 100% virtual enabled in what we do.
Okay. Here's an interesting question. Says, I've been the CEO of this company for a number of years. I've never had to answer to anyone. Having an advisory board makes me feel a bit uncomfortable that they'll be looking over my shoulder, questioning how I run the company. What can you say about this?
That's an interesting question, and again, the whole idea of the advisory board is to really, for the CEO to be open to other thoughts and opinions and, a different way of thinking or a different way of doing business. Now, again, they can choose to say, I don't want to do what you're suggesting, which is totally fine. But usually when someone comes to us, they're ready. They're at that point in their business cycle that they want to listen to others. And, an advisory board where you have mentors with, dozens of years of experience, or we're only here to help you get to where you want to go. Whether it's to raise, sales by $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million, acquire another business or exit.
And I'd also like to add to that as we said earlier, you as the CEO are going to drive the agenda and really set the areas that we're going to be working on together. So when we align on those objectives, the advisory board, isn't going to be poking their noses outside of those objectives. Certainly we need to think broadly, but our plan is to work with you on the specific strategic objectives that you have in mind.
Okay, you mentioned several different services, backgrounds that advisory board members bring to the table. How many mentors are there in the New York chapter, and what kinds of backgrounds are available to help my business?
So there are, I believe, between 80 and 100 mentors in the New York office. And what's great is that there's 10,000 mentors across the country. So if we don't have the specific expertise that you're requesting, I can always go out to the national database and look for folks that can help as well, either to be a part of the advisory board or to join for a meeting. So we really try to, get to what you're looking for in terms of the expertise that you're looking for. We're definitely, we'll do the research to get you what you need. And if we can't, or if we don't have that expertise, we'll certainly tell you. But, the SCORE New York office, for example, didn't have at first the franchise expert. And so we reached out to the Westchester office, and it proved to be a great, it was great. And then we ended up having another person join SCORE with franchise expertise. So we're always trying to, look for the best people for the job. And again, the relationship matters with the CEO and their management team. So if it all works together, it's a really nice experience for everyone.
Okay. A couple more questions and we'll wrap it up. You mentioned the criteria for setting up an advisory board is more than $2 million in sales, established management group, and a $3,000 annual fee. Is there any other criteria that goes into your selection to determine who qualifies and who you'd be willing to set up an advisory board for?
Right. So the 2 million is really just the base number. We work with organizations as high as, 20 million, 15 million. So we work with very large organizations as well. I'm sorry, can you say part of that question again?
Other than the qualifications that you stated in the presentation to be qualified to be an advisory board client, are there other things that go into your decision making?
I'd say, as part of, we really look to see if we can help you, right? So it's what we do at the beginning is we interview the CEO, or it's actually really just have a conversation with the CEO. We like to talk to their key management personnel. If you have a site, we like to go out to your site to see what's happening. And then we sort of go back to the team internally and see if we can really help you based on the pain points that you're mentioning to us. And in that case, we try to form the team. If we feel that we really can't help you, then we don't want to waste your time. 99% of the time we can certainly help you, but that's really the criteria. Or if, the organization isn't, large enough, doesn't meet the minimum thresholds, but we certainly try to do everything that we can to form a team.
Excellent. Okay, last final question is, who do we contact if we're interested and want to speak to SCORE about an advisory board?
Well, my name is on the screen, so there's my email address. So feel free. We hope the advisory board is open for business, and we'd love to field your questions and answers. So feel free to contact me, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. We have pretty quick turnaround. Okay, guys, that's all of the questions. So I'm going to turn it back to our host to wrap up. Great. So, again, I wanted to thank everyone for participating. We really appreciate the time. And as I said, SCORE Advisory Board is open for business, and we're fielding, questions. And as I said, my contact information is on the screen, and we will get back to you. But thank you for being here today. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Be safe.